Hello, friends and neighbors, and again, I am David K. Welcome back to my 20-year Philippine adventure, and my has it been an adventure. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the law, your rights, the do's and don'ts, and keeping everything legal so that you don't end up in a hurt locker legally when you come to the Philippines. Okay, and first of all, yeah, I've been here for 20 years. I've seen every flavor, I think, of most of this, of what's going on in this country. I've been arrested. I didn't spend a long time in jail, only one day. Thank God for that. And I'm going to explain to you everything that happened and how things happen here in the Philippines so that you can avoid a lot of problems when you come here. First thing to keep in mind, there is no Bill of Rights like you have in the U.S. or like you might have in some European countries. And you'll excuse me, I've been a little bit hoarse today, so I'm going to take a sip of my adult beverage. Meaning to say, there is no First Amendment here, like we have in the U.S. You're allowed to say anything you want, anytime. As a matter of fact, I minored in law when I went to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, once upon a time. The thing is that the First Amendment wasn't designed to protect speech that is comforting and wonderful. The First Amendment is to protect speech that nobody wants to hear. I mean, I hate to say it, but we don't need a law that says, well, you're allowed to tell people, happy holidays or happy birthday or good morning. You're allowed to say that pretty much anywhere on the planet. You need a law, the First Amendment, to speak out against the government, to speak out about your beliefs, to speak out about things that other people might not go with you on. And of course, I support the First Amendment unconditionally in the U.S., and even if someone is a jerk, even so, if you have a Nazi who's down on the street corner standing on a soapbox telling everybody about how wonderful Hitler is, I support his right to do that. It lets me know I don't want to be his friend, first of all, and sometimes you need to be able to figure out who's your friend and who isn't your friend. So the First Amendment is very, very important in the U.S. We don't have that here in the Philippines, so you do not have freedom of speech here. As a matter of fact, if you say anything against the Philippines, you can be deported for that. So I always tell people, if you don't have anything nice to say about the country, just keep your mouth shut, unless you want to end up having to answer for it later, you want to be in trouble for it. And that goes for arguments with individual people. You need to be careful what you say, because here in the Philippines, you can get arrested for verbal abuse or unjust vexation, or a variety of other things that they could twist into you being an abuser or an unsavory visitor. They have a lot of phrases and a lot of things they could use. I remember one guy, a Chinese guy, posted something on his Facebook one time. It was actually a very terrible thing to post, and I don't blame Filipinos for being upset, but he called Pinoys, he called them pig noise, which obviously is a terrible thing to say. I mean, you're a guest in this country. You don't want to insult people with things like that. That doesn't even make any sense. I wanted to apologize for him on his behalf, but anyway, and I think he posted that on his Facebook after getting irritated with some people here in the Philippines, and he was arrested and deported for posting that. Okay, so even if you post something that they find unsavory, you could find yourself on a flight out of here and not welcome back, and they will blacklist you and not let you come back into the country if you do things that are particularly obnoxious. And of course, naturally, verbal abuse and stepping out of line on that kind of thing is a big no-no. Also, you don't want to come here and start talking about politics or get involved in Philippine politics. I mean, if somebody asks you, oh, do you like President Trump or something like that, you can always say, oh, yeah, well, I don't have a problem, whatever it might be. But if they say, well, who do you support for the Philippine presidential election? The best thing to say is, hey, I don't vote here, I don't have a horse in that race, and I just wish you guys the very best. You guys have had a lot of things to overcome, and I hope that your next president or whoever really does help the Philippines overcome some of the things that they've been facing. And that's very diplomatic of you, and it keeps you out of harm's way as far as getting involved with the wrong people. We have had people here in the past, not recently to my knowledge, but we have had people here that started getting involved in local politics. They started going out. They started, trying to, sway people and preach the gospel according to them, who ended up disappearing or ended up, they found them several months later under a bridge or something. And you don't want to end up, obviously, in that kind of a predicament. So, the best thing to do is just, when it comes to words, just keep to yourself. Okay? Don't get involved and start getting, all these heated discussions and whatnot, because it's not going to end well for you. I mean, if someone agrees with you, great. If they don't, you could probably have a big problem on your hands, and you don't need it. You don't need it, and you're not going to win. That's just the way it's going to be. Okay, the legal system here. When it comes to the legal system in the Philippines, you're a foreigner. You know this. The legal system here is not going to favor you. They see you as someone who is visiting the country and is making a hassle for a local Filipino. And I'm sorry to say that, but that's how the courts here tend to see you if you're a foreigner in a courtroom. I'll give you a couple of examples of cases that I've actually been involved in. One that I've won, one that I've lost, one that I won on appeal, another one that I won. So it kind of goes like this. First of all, if somebody swindles you here in the Philippines, you can, for the most part, forget about it. You got robbed. Now, you can always have that person taken to barangay hall. The barangay here is kind of like the village, the local village, the village council. And they'll try to mediate something and see if they can get the person to give you what it was back. They might even bring the police if the person broke a window in your house or something like that. They can always bring the police and have the person, taken in. But aside from petty crimes, like I said, they broke a window. I have a restaurant here. I had a guy one time throw a glass and break the television screen. The big screen on the wall. He threw a glass at the screen. I guess he didn't like his karaoke score or something. And so, yeah, we had him downtown, and we ended up getting a cell phone from him in exchange for the big screen, because they were actually going to arrest the guy for that. So aside from things like those kinds of petty crimes, you're going to have a pretty rough road if you're trying to sue people in court for anything more meaningful. I was actually in the process of evicting my estranged mother-in-law. I broke up with my ex-wife. I had an ex-wife here in the Philippines who was absolutely terrible. And we broke up when I found out she was having an affair with her nephew and about 20 other guys. And I said, okay, this is it. I can't handle this girl anymore. She's obviously completely out of control. She's not interested in being a wife. I can't trust her to go to a family reunion without getting laid. So we parted ways. Actually, what happened was when I found out what she was doing, she left, and she went to go live with her sister and her nephew, who promptly left the country when he discovered that I had found out about him. So anyway, bad situation, and it got worse. Anyway, I ended up evicting her mother, because her mother, for almost a year, continued to live in my building where I was living and working. There was an extra room there, and of course I was together with the girl, and her mother lived in the extra room. Didn't have a problem, but imagine living in a house with your estranged mother-in-law in the other room. And of course, naturally, she was going around telling everybody that it was her house and that I was the one that was living there on her, and she was the one that was paying for everything, and basically trying to make herself look like, I was the jerk and whatnot, when I was paying for her everything. I mean, hand and foot. I was paying for her food. I was paying for, if she needed a new piece of clothing. Obviously, I paid the rent. I paid all of the bills. I paid, the electricity. I paid every single. She literally paid zero, and just lived there and was going around telling everyone that I was some sort of a big freeloader. Well, when I got word of it, I told her she could leave. I said, get the hell out of my house. And of course, I had to call the barangay, and then they had to come, and they had to tell her, well, his name is on the lease, and it's not your name, so if he tells you to leave, you have to leave. So the next day, she left that night and went to stay with her daughter, and then the next day she showed up with a big cart out front to collect her things and move out. And I made sure to have the entire time she was there recorded on video. And one of the last things she did before she left was she picked up an electric fan, a rather large electric fan, and she hit me in the face with it. And it broke my glasses. It kind of gave me a black eye and a bloody nose and whatnot, but it was all on video. And so I showed it to my attorney after she was, she left, and I changed the locks and all that good stuff, and got myself bandaged up, got my glasses fixed, and one thing and another. But I was kind of pissed. I mean, in my country, if you hit someone in the face with a fan and you break their glasses and give them a bloody nose, you should answer for that, right? I mean, that's illegal. Well, it's illegal in the Philippines too. So I took the video to my attorney, who was already on retainer. Otherwise, it would have cost me $1,000 just to retain him, which is normal in the Philippines. And anyway, he said, yeah, we have a case. So we filed a case with the local prosecutor against her. And she was summoned to come to the court. They didn't issue a warrant for her arrest. They gave her a summons, and of course she showed up. And after about 6 months of court hearings, and nothing happens here fast, by the way, when you go to court, and 6 months is record speed. Normally, I have another case that spanned 8 years. I mean, 6 months. But basically, it was a cut and dry case. I mean, there was only like 4 or 5 hearings. They schedule one a month, and then usually they skip one because the judge is out sick or the prosecutor can't come in or inclement weather or something. But either way, 6 months later, I'm expecting them to issue the guilty verdict. I showed the video in court. The judge saw it and they were like, "Ew, yeah, that's kind of ugly," and she was found guilty. And the judge found her guilty of what's called unjust vexation. In other words, being a big jerk, I guess. Unjust vexation. And found her guilty and fined her, gave her a fine. Her fine was $1.80, 100 pesos. And that was it. Case was over. So she was found guilty of a physical assault crime against another human being in which he sustained injuries. And she had to pay $1.80. Yeah, I guess it goes on her record, but that was it. Now, if you did that to a Filipino, you would be looking at 6 years in prison. Kid yourself not. You would be looking at prison time. But if someone does that to you, they got about $1.80 to pay. So the system here is not exactly fair. Now, how do I know what happens if so basically, just to wrap that up, if you want to take someone to court here in the Philippines, you have to know that the judge is going to be against you, the court is going to be against you, you're a foreigner invading their land, trying to take advantage of their laws, causing some poor Filipino a giant pain in the butt because you probably shouldn't even be here in the first place, probably should go home. That's their thinking. Why are you even here? If you're not having a good time, just go home. And they don't really want you in their justice system. My ex-wife cheated on me with dozens of guys. In the Philippines, if you cheat on your spouse, a wife, oddly enough, there's no law about men cheating. It makes you wonder. But if a wife cheats on her husband here, both the man and the wife are looking at 6 years in prison. Adultery is a felony in the Philippines. And I had photographs and confessions from the man one of the guys who cheated with my wife because he claimed that he didn't know she was married until he found out later. And then when he found out, he broke it off. So actually then at that point he becomes a witness for the state and she becomes the criminal, which kind of makes sense. But nevertheless, that was a rock solid case and everyone agreed that it was a rock solid case. But she's a Filipina. All she had to do was go out on a date with the prosecutor She has things that I don't have. And the next thing you know, the case is dismissed. No charges. You can file an appeal, which is going to go to the Department of Justice, and good luck. Because even if they say, yes, you have a case, and this has happened to me before also, they send it back to the prosecutor. And then when you follow up, they say, well, yes, you have a case, but we cannot force the prosecutor to prosecute the case if the prosecutor doesn't want to prosecute the case. So if your wife has done something with the prosecutor and he doesn't want to prosecute the case is dead. So in that kind of a situation, she can do anything she wants. She can break every law she wants. She can do anything she feels like to you. And as long as the prosecutor doesn't want to prosecute her, it doesn't matter. She's not going to face justice, no matter what. So, you need to be aware of this if you're a foreigner. You're not going to be able to make a case and have it come to fruition in a way that would really make a difference. I mean, barring anything, I said capital murder, I suppose they would probably, chase someone down for, but you're dead at that point. But any other crime, adultery, perjury, yes, she committed perjury in court. I had everything written, I had everything documented. She committed perjury 10 times over in one affidavit. And I filed the case, and the prosecutor wouldn't prosecute her. I took it to the Court of Appeals. I took it to the Appellant Division. They agreed, cut and dry case of perjury, and then they said, but if the prosecutor won't prosecute it, she committed perjury and got away with it. So there you go. Game over. Nothing you can do. Now, the way you get around this is you hire an attorney here, and you can go to the attorney, and you can say, what extra fee do I have to pay in order to get this to go my way? Now, I'm not saying that there's any corruption in the Philippines. No, I wouldn't come off and I wouldn't say anything like that. That would be presumptuous. But a lot of times, things can get handled under the table or in the back room or whatnot, and that's where certain things can be meted out between prosecutors and attorneys and judges. And things can sometimes get settled in that way. I'm just saying, and I don't mean any disrespect. That's just the way it is, okay? So the system is not exactly fair when it comes to dealing with foreigners. Let's just leave it at that. After my wife and I broke up, she committed adultery God knows how many times. I found out she was banging her nephew, the son of her sister, and so forth and so on. It got really, really ugly. And after about a year and a half, because people were kind of blaming her, and rightly so. I mean, you don't have sex with your nephew and tell people that had no effect on your marriage breaking up. She made up a story. She found this really, really rich foreigner, and he hired a law firm in Makati, and she made up this long story about me being guilty of verbal abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse, economic abuse, theft, marital rape, and attempted murder. I think the attempted murder was a little over the top, to be completely frank. Obviously, no evidence, not a shred of evidence. The entire story is completely fabricated. It's just pure nonsense from beginning to end. I would recognize little passages in it as maybe we had an argument on this topic once upon a time, but there was no evidence. There was absolutely zero evidence attached to this criminal complaint against me. So in my country, in the U.S., or I'm sure if you're in Europe, if somebody files a complaint against you and there is zero evidence attached to that complaint, most prosecutors in any country around the world, excuse me again, but most prosecutors in any country in the world, they're not handling this. They're going to say, I'm sorry, there's no evidence. I don't have anything to go on. And one of the prosecutors, a lady prosecutor in Marikina, actually got the complaint because she filed it in 4 cities. How do you like that? So yeah, I was in court for the next, most of a decade. So anyway, I had a female prosecutor in Marikina, and she said, "There's no evidence. I'm not going to prosecute this guy," and she just basically threw it out, and then that was that. The other 3 cities, she filed it in with male prosecutors, and you gotta wonder what these guys. Never mind. She's really beautiful. She's really sexy. And she's really convincing, and they go, "Okay, baby, don't worry, we'll take care of you, and if you're free Friday night, I can make sure that bad old husband of yours really gets his comeuppance, and maybe in the meantime I can get a little comeuppance also. And so the next thing you know, I'm indicted. So I was indicted in Pasay, Makati, and Antipolo on this massive list of charges that were just complete fanciful. There was, again, zero attached evidence. None of it happened. I don't. She made up. She made up. Well, she made up the whole thing. I mean, like I said, there were a couple of little tiny things that she mentioned that I kind of remembered. She had one story where she walked past a karaoke bar and she saw me sitting in the karaoke bar with another woman. This was true. Partly. What she forgot to mention is that I was sitting with another woman and her husband. It wasn't me and another woman, it was me and another couple. Because I was talking to them about having my car fixed or something along the line. The husband's a mechanic, and of course he had his wife with him. So what she made sound like was, oh my God, I caught my husband with another chick, was actually me sitting at a table with two other people, a husband and wife. But that's the way that her complaint was. It was just complete fabrication, everything blown out of proportion, everything else. Anyway, so I'm on trial for, what was it? I was on trial for physical abuse, sexual abuse, and psychological abuse. So I'm on trial for these three charges. And I'll tell you the Makati case right quick, but this is the way it worked out. And again, I'm just telling you this to let you know that if you're a foreigner in the Philippines and you're in court against especially a cute little Filipina who's sitting over there crying her eyes out, she's a great actress. I gotta let you know. I just, so many times, I just wanted to give her the slow clap right there in the courtroom because she was just awesome. Until I realized she was talking about me, and I'm like, hey, wait a minute. But physical abuse. Okay, so I'm on trial for physical abuse, and she's up sitting on the witness stand, and the prosecutor said, so, tell us about the time your husband hurt you. And she sat there probably silent for 15 seconds, forgot her entire weird story, and said, he never hurt me. That was her testimony. The judge looked at my attorney and said, do you want to cross-examine? And my attorney was like, no. I think that's the case. She said he'd never hurt her. And this is a physical abuse case. So, no, I think we're done. Nothing else I really want to say. Nothing we want to add to that. Okay, and of course, naturally, So, it came time for the verdict, and the judge said, guilty anyway. Guilty anyway. The woman just got done testifying that I never hurt her, and I was found guilty of physical abuse after she testified that I never hurt her. And I got 6 years prison sentence for that. 6 years prison sentence after she said I didn't hurt her. And 100,000 peso fine. Now remember the person who actually did hurt me, and they got fined what? 100 pesos and no jail? I got fined for not hurting someone 100,000 pesos and 6 years in prison. And I never touched the girl. How do you like that? The next case was sexual abuse. Now, she has a record of cheating on me. So, she claimed in court, and her complaint was, she cheated on me because I used my mind powers to force her to have sex with other men. I'm sorry. That deserves a quick sip. I used my mind powers. And of course, naturally, she came up with the story of, I was with another guy, and David was there, and this guy came up to me, and he said, let's go to a hotel. And he looked drunk, and I was scared, and so I agreed to go to the hotel with him. And the prosecutor said, well, what about David? Was he there? Oh yeah, I forgot. He was there too. And he was also scary because he's a guy. And he was also scary. So I ended up going to the hotel with this guy, and he told me he wanted to have sex with me, so I let him. Well, what about David? Was he there? Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, David came along also. And David was there. And David let him also. That was her entire case. There is no record of her checking into a hotel with anybody. I went to the hotel that she claimed that this happened at. They have no record of any reservation or anybody staying there under her name or anyone else's name that particular night that we recognized. And so basically, it was just a nonsense story. Oh, and by the way, the hotel she picked was next door to the courthouse, the one that she just passed on the way coming in. That she said it was that hotel. Naturally, it was the one next door to the courthouse. Sure, yeah, why not? And so I testified and I said, Your Honor, I have no idea what she's talking about. I can't make her have sex with me, and I can't stop her from having sex with other guys. So for her to say that I used my mind powers to stop her from having sex with me and to make her have sex with other guys is kind of like, number one, impossible, and number two, the exact opposite of what I would want her to do since I'm married to her. And the judge said, okay, well, there's no evidence against you, so guilty anyway. I got another 6 years in prison and another 100,000 peso fine for that. And on the third case, which was psychological abuse, you're supposed to have a psychologist certify that you're suffering from some form of abuse. And of course, naturally, she couldn't come up with that. And my attorney's like, well, Your Honor, there's nothing here on this. There's nothing on this case. We have nothing here on this case. So, we pled not guilty. We don't know what's going on. And the judge said, okay, all right, there's nothing on this case. So anyway, guilty anyway. Another 6 years and another 100,000 peso in fine. So I left the courtroom with 18 years of prison and 300,000 pesos in fines, with absolutely no evidence that I had done anything wrong whatsoever, and her testimony that I had not done anything wrong. That was rather strict. So naturally, of course, we sent that to the appeals court, Court of Appeals, and it all got overturned on appeal. But was it fair? No, not fair. Don't expect fairness if you're going to court in the Philippines. Okay, to wrap up this topic before we go on to anything else, and to hopefully wrap this up, I hope you guys like the new microphone. It seems to be working much better than the old setup. If you're paying for anything in the Philippines, again, if you pay a contractor to build a fence, pay as you go. Do not pay up front for anything. Because if you pay up front and he disappears with the money and he doesn't come back, you're out the money. Now, again, you can track him down, you can hire an attorney, you can go after him in the court, you can prosecute, you can spend the next several years going after this guy for the $1,000 that, he stole from you, and, you can spend another $3,000 or $4,000 chasing him all over the place, and at the end of the day, you're not going to get blood out of a turnip. And so when he doesn't have the money at the end of the day, he's going to default on whatever judgment you did finally get. Now you're going to be chasing him around to try and get the judgment enforced, and then he's not going to have any money, and then don't pay up front. Don't pay up front. If he says, I need money for materials, so, okay, how much is the total job? The whole job is going to be $2,000 for this whole project. All right. How much do you need for materials? I need $400 for materials. All in, I'm going to get you enough materials for what you need on day one. What do you need on day one? And you pay for his materials that day, and then you pay for his labor that day. You don't give him $2,000 up front, you will never see him again. Okay? And by the way, don't lend money in the Philippines, because a lot of people, when they see you coming, they see that pound sign, they see that dollar sign, they start thinking about money, right? Don't lend money. I have lent money probably during my first year or two here. I lent money probably about, I would say, half a dozen times, not that often, but about a half a dozen times. I have never been paid back yet. Anything. I had one guy, a tricycle driver, who parked out in front of my house every day for nearly a year. And every time I would go outside, I would get in his tricycle and he would give me a ride. And one day he said, Sir David, could I borrow 300 pesos? I need to go get some pain medicine for my wife. She fell down and she hurt herself, and I need to go get some medicine for my wife. And I said, sure, buddy, here's 300 pesos. 300 pesos. What's 300 pesos? $5.50? I never saw him again. He left the neighborhood over 300 pesos, right? If you lend money to anybody, they're not paying you back. And unless you are in the lending business, and today I just tell people, look, I love you with all my heart. I'm not in the lending business. I don't do money business with friends. I just don't. If you have anything of value, you have a cell phone, you can take it to the pawn shop. If you have jewelry, you can take it to the pawn shop. There's a lot of places you can go to borrow money that don't involve me. So don't lend money. You're never going to see it again. All right? So when it comes down to it here in the Philippines, if you try for legal recourse against anybody who wrongs you, you're going to be in it for thousands of dollars. And it's going to take you years and years and years to get any sort of semi-satisfaction, if at all. And even then, the judge might just side with them and say, well, you know, something is wrong with the contract. I'm not finding it binding. Well, it was a verbal agreement. Verbal agreements, believe it or not, in the U.S. can be binding under certain circumstances, especially if you have a witness. In the Philippines, no, not really. It has to be in black and white. And if it wasn't drafted by an attorney, it was just an agreement between you and the guy, then it'll be up to the judge as to whether or not she finds it legally binding, which is another big question. So if ever you find yourself in the clutches of the Philippine justice system, you might just want to ask yourself, is this really worth it? Because at the end of the day, if you win, the chances of you winning are pretty darn small. The chances that you're going to spend a bucket of money trying to win are pretty darn big. And you just got to ask yourself, do I really want to spend the next several years of my life chasing this $1,000, or should I just pay as I go next time? I recommend the pay-as-you-go system. Try to stay out of the legal system here in the Philippines. If you need to hire an attorney, that's another group of people who are pretty shady, I guess, here in the Philippines. In the U.S., I know that in the U.S., attorneys generally try to figure out a way to settle cases as fast as they can. Get their fee, go ahead and charge you for whatever hours they booked, and get the case off the dockets and out of the court as fast as humanly possible. Here in the Philippines, it seems like their goal is the other way around. They want to keep this in court forever and ever and ever because they get paid an appearance fee every time there's a hearing. Come hell or high water, whether the judge is there or not, whether the court was closed or not, no matter what happens, if there's a hearing and that attorney is booked for it, you're going to pay an appearance fee. And that appearance fee is going to be around $100 per visit. Yes, attorneys here actually are about one of the only groups of people that do pretty darn good financially. They earn first world wages. And that's not something that other people are going to be able to do. Anyway, this video ran kind of long. I'm going to try and keep them much shorter in the future, but I did want to let you know that if you're in the Philippines and you have a legal dispute, even if your case is rock darn solid, your chances of winning are pretty darn slim. And if you do win, your level of satisfaction it's not going to be what you thought. It's just not going to be what you thought. Okay? So stay out of the law here in the Philippines, and whatever you do, don't commit a crime in the Philippines, because judges love nothing more than to toss your skinny butt in jail for anything they can think of. Okay? So, all the love, and until the next time, cheers. As always, I appreciate a like and a thumbs up, and I would really love it if you would subscribe to the channel. There's going to be a lot more interesting videos coming up, and you're going to love them. Looking forward to seeing you on those. Cheers.